Welcome, my dear students of class 11, to this English class with me, your tutor Atsinyo Sekose. And today our topic is titled as Kelhoukevira, which is actually a poem and written by Kelu. So we are going to first take a look at the background of the author here. So Kelu is one of the famous Naga writer, and she was born in 1959, and she's very much living and amongst us. And she is a poet and novelist, a short story writer, and a writer of children's book as well. She is in fact one of the first in so many things in the area or in the field of literature, especially to do with Nagas. And we can say, that's why we can say that she is a literary giant of Nagaland. She is the founder of this Bark Weaver publication, and she is also awarded and recognized for her work in literature for so many of her works, such as novels. And she was awarded the Governor's Medal of Excellence, Hindu Literary Prize Award for When the River Sleeps, which is a novel, and she was also conferred this Catalan Barcelona Award. And her novel, such as A Terrible Matriarchy and even Naga Village Remembered, are translated into different languages today. And Son of Thundercloud, which is also again a novel, has also won this Bal Sahitya Puraskar Award. So these are some of her most celebrated work, but there are still so much more. Now the poem Kelhoukevira is a title that is taken from the poetry book titled as Kelhoukevira itself. So what does her work depict? What is the world or the context of this author here? To quote her, the author herself, in one of the interviews, she said that her work depicts about or talked about lived realities. In other words, what is lived realities? About the history, about facts, and it always depicts about Naga culture and traditions. And so here we have the setting in the poem Kelhoukevira. Here we have the setting of that turbulent history of the Naga people in the 1950s. So Kelhoukevira is published in 1982, and it is the first book of poetry. We are going to take a little bit of a look at the setting here. So the setting, like I said, it is in the 1950s, it is post-World War, which means after the World War, both 1 and 2. So what happened in the 1950s across the globe, what is happening here is that most of the countries, in fact almost all the countries, they are trying to restructure their government, and also there was a lot of political and social unrest. A great upheaval is happening across the globe. And likewise, in the context of the poem here, Kelhoukevira is referring to the land that is Nagaland, and it is an Angami word, and it means where life is good. So here, at that point of time in the 1950s, she talked about the historic event where Nagas united together to fight for the cause of freedom and independence. So this poem is a recount of such kind of events. And so that's why we would find that the setting here, we can also see a lot of descriptions of the nature, or for that matter, the Naga Hills, that is the topography, the geographical aspects of the land. And she also talked about the confusion that people faced during the time of war here. So to backtrack a little bit before the war, we are going to find, in fact, we learned that Naga people were, before they united to fight for freedom, every village has its own unique identity, has its own unique way of functioning, and has its own way of governance, we can say, and independence. So prior to that, we find that Nagas are peace-loving people. They are independent in their own way, and they enjoy a peaceful land that depends on the benevolence of nature. If we look into the history of the Naga people, you would find that people are very understanding. They are peace-loving and respect. They have great respect for the land as well. And it is that is why we will find that in the folklores and in the songs and music, you will find that it is always a celebration of nature in itself. So the typography, we have such kind of blessing that which are in abundance and great beauty as well. We are also people, agricultural people, and cultivation is part of our culture itself, we can say, where we have all these green fields to cultivate, and diverse culture and vibrant ethnicity of the inhabitants, that is the people of Nagaland. We also have diverse different kinds of beautiful culture and vibrant ethnicity, and these are celebrated, these are told, passed down through folklores and stories. And songs, again coming back to the songs, which is also being addressed in the poem here, are a great part of our that cultural life that we have here. It is a representation of celebration. It also reflects the kind of work that we do, and so songs are a great part of the young people as well as it is part and parcel of our life when it comes to our culture and diversity as well. So we also have these warriors who are respected and revered, great respect for them. Why? Because they are the protectors, they are the sentinels, the guards of villages. So we are also talking about here warriors who had fought for the cause of the Naga freedom and who lost their lives in the battle. So that's the context, that's the backdrop of our poem here. So in the 1950s, there is a great transition, and this kind of transition is seen through war that is being faced by the people, and it turned the land into a war-torn land. And Nagas, those who were Nagas are very proud of their warriors. What happened to them? They are being slaughtered and crushed, defeated by the enemies. So here in the poem, we also see the imagery of the remnants of after war, what happened, after the battle, what happened. We see dead warriors, burning villages, and great grief, people walking away from their villages, and the songs which had come to an end or stopped, ceased songs. That's what we have here. And we also see here people walking away from their beloved village, that great proud village that they lived in. They had to flee from that in order to escape the war. So let's take a look at the poem in detail here. Kelhoukevira by Eastern Kiri. They brought in their dead by night, their proud warriors, their mighty warriors, the brave beloved of the gods, to rest under troubled skies and battle-scarred lands, that some corner of a vanquished field may forever remain Nagaland. Forever Nagaland. So that was repeated there. We see here in this poem a whole lot of poetic device here, that is personification. We already know what is personification. Inanimated objects that are given lifelike qualities, and a lot of imageries, that is creating mental pictures. Like I said, this poem is a recount of that historic past here. So she reflected back on, the poet reflected back on those past using imagery. So here we see a picture of the aftermath of a battle here. People are going to collect the dead corpse. And what kind of dead corpse here? They are proud warriors. Remember, we held our warriors as brave people. Why? Because they are the sentinels, the protectors of the villages. They were held in great regard. What happened to these proud, mighty warriors? They were made to be buried under troubled skies. And troubled skies here is referring to that war-torn land. And the battle-scarred lands, that some corner of a vanquished field. So as they were buried in that land, even if it's a small corner here, even if it seems that it is being vanquished, defeated, it would forever speak or remain Nagaland, because they are the people who stood up for their land. That is, they are also people who are great patriots, not just warriors, but who have deep love for their land. So they would forever remain Nagaland. So the scene here is after a typical battle scene, which also to perform, in fact, burial rituals. And the old lives, that historical mark would forever, this kind of battle, the historical battle would forever remain or be a part of Nagaland. And this phrase is being repeated because here we have a refrain, repeated lines or phrase, when the author wants to emphasize on certain points here. There was one of whom the world was not worthy. He stood firm as steel sank into his flesh and rooted itself in the soft earth beneath, the soft earth beneath. But he never cried out once. No, he never cried out once. So here, the land that is Kelhoukevira, she is also not only talking about the geographical aspects here, she's also talking about the people, she's also talking about here the warrior whom the world was not worthy. She said that the world does not deserve it. Why? Because this was an innocent land that was being ravaged by war or by the evils of mankind. But what happened to this land? What happened to these warriors? He, referring to the warriors, they stood firm. In other words, they were brave and courageous, even though as steel sank, even though bullets sank into their flesh, even as they were fighting for against the enemies who were much more powerful than them. And yet, these bullets or steel sank into his flesh, these bullets are rooted itself in the soft earth beneath. And the soft earth beneath is again repeated. Why? Because it also referred to the innocence of the people, the innocence of the land here. So these kinds of war is being waged against a people, a land who is an innocent land. And yet what happened to these warriors when they stood up to fight against such kind of injustice or to fight against the evils of war? They did not waver. In fact, they never cried out once. No, again the poet repeated, no, he never cried out once. They did it with love for their country. They did it with love for the land, and they did it unafraid, and they were brave and courageous, and they were uncomplaining. In other words, it's because they know that it is for a great cause that they are fighting, that they are giving their lives for. That is the freedom of the people, that is the sovereignty of the people, or the independence of the people. Or we can also say here, they were fighting for the unity of the people of Nagaland. So these are patriots, these warriors are patriots who were unwavering in the war or in the battle, and who took bullets, steel, for the cause of freedom. We have here a personification here. Nature is being depicted as reflecting the turmoils, the sufferings of the people. The golden fields, they lay unripped and sere. Those golden fields, again the word golden here is very significant. Why? Because what happened in times of war, people were not able to go and harvest those blessings that they toiled on. And what happened here is they were not able to go and harvest, and so it lay unripped and withered as blood freely flowed. Again, this also laid the emphasis that it was a war that was much too overpowering for the great, even for the great warriors, and mingled with the rains. It became part of the soil, in other words, that is the soil of Nagaland, and stained the virgin soil. The virgin soil here is representing again the innocence of the people, the innocence of the land. These kind of evils has become mingled, a part of the land. And like 1,000 scarlet sunsets, scarlet here is referring to the color of red. In the evening, when the sun sets, we see streaks of red lights, or we can say that is being reflected by the sunlight. And what happened? This is like the free flow of blood. That is the picture that we see here. And if we remember, Nagaland is a land where it is blessed with rich topography or geographical aspects, and one of the great and beautiful aspect here is the blue mountains. If we look at the nearest mountain, it will appear blue, And so the poet again emphasized on back of the blue hills, the blue hills. These at the back of these blue hills, there will, the next mountain will be greener, and then the shades grew darker. But at the back of these blue hills, what is being shown here? Streak of red color that stained the land, that is the innocent land. So that's a very powerful imagery that she had used in these lines here. And so here we can say that it is recounting the battlefield, or recounting the scene of the war, where a land was being ravaged, where people, innocent people, had to flee from their villages in order to escape from war. So, and we see here a lot of personification here in the fact that even nature seemed to be representing, nature seemed to be showing the innocence of the people. Even nature appears as though it is mourning for the people. Their hearts too grieved to head the harvest. Why are those golden fields lay unreaped? Because they were too grieved. They were losing a lot of their warriors. Maidens ceased song. Now, maidens here, innocent young girls, they have stopped their singing. We would also find that fathers lost their lives. These warriors are young males, we can also say, and young adults. These warriors are those people, the protectors of the village, and those males are also lovers of certain maidens, and those people were being killed. And that's why maidens' songs had came to a stop. Why? Because they were mourning the brave ones, those warriors who had lost their lives, and blindly followed a broken people. Interestingly, the word blindly here is very interesting, because in a war-torn land, what happened is the people, the innocent people, women folk especially, are in great confusion to pick up their lives from such kind of grief that is it creates a lot of confusion as well, a mental breakdown. That's why the poet said that they blindly followed a broken people. Why broken? Because now the unity that they were fighting for, they have already lost a lot of warriors. Their villages were being burned, and they had to walk away from those kind of horror. Who turned their backs and slowly walked away. Slowly. Why? Because they were compelled to walk away from a burning village, a village that was once upon a time a happy village, a burning village. It is now turned into a burning village. If you talked about and recount this kind of history, you would find that those hotspots of the villages or the places where the battle was being fought, it can be seen in the distance as burning and streaks of smokes that was going up against the sky. So they had to walk away from it. Lots of granaries were being burnt. So this is how the people, not only the warriors, but the people of the land were being conquered. And the next line is very significant here. And there were some in foreign lands who still spoke of Kelhoukevira. So there are still some people who, at that point of time, when the battle was being fought in this way, people could not stay in the village, so they had to flee from the neighboring villages. They had to flee to the jungle in order to escape the war. Some of them went abroad for the cause of the freedom of the people. And that's why the poet here is also saying or implying that even it can also be those non-Nagas, the world itself, Nagas who sacrificed their lives and who died in the foreign countries. People still recount their work, their memories, how they had sacrificed their lives, and how these people, by remembering them, their deeds and their history, we are also reliving. It also spoke about the yearning of the people, that is Kelhoukevira, where life is good. It also recounts about that land where life was good. So that's how she pointed out that this is the yearning of the people. While her fields lay barren and desecrated, what happened? This is the aftermath of the battle or the war. Her fields are already destroyed. They were vanquished, conquered. It lay empty and desecrated, polluted, destroyed, completely destroyed in this manner. And yet, it is not all gloom. This poem is not all gloom here, because in the line who still spoke of Kelhoukevira also reflects and highlight the fact that as long as we remember that past, as long as we remember the good cause and those warriors, by celebrating those warriors, we would also be giving them, we would also be acknowledging, in fact, their sacrifices for the cause. Her songs sacrificed to the wind, her warriors to the Great Spirit that trampled her silent heels and squeezed the life out of her and washed their guilt in her blood. So here is the recount of what happened to the warriors, what happened to the people, what happened to the land when they were completely destroyed in this manner, when they were completely overpowered by the enemies. Her songs, her here is referring to the land. What happened to her songs? That songs that is a great part and parcel of our culture and our identity. Those kind of things were being sacrificed to the wind. It went hitless. Her warriors to the Great Spirit. The warriors lost their lives to the Great Spirit. And Great Spirit here we are referring to the evils of mankind, who were much too overpowering. They trampled her silent heels. In other words, conquered it. They completely destroyed it. And what here, silent heels is also referring to the fact that they were being oppressed completely, and silent because it is also an innocent heels. Why silent? We can also say that their warriors were already destroyed. The people had to flee from the village. The people had their voices, we can say, or their cause went unheard. And that's why she said that it was trampled and it was a silent heels. It was silent heels. And squeezed the life out of her. That's how the land was completely overpowered and conquered, and washed their guilt in her blood. Washed their guilt in her blood here. The kinds of evils that was being done to the land. The war, a foreign war that was being waged in the land, a war that was uncalled for, a war that was not a part of our people, but the people had to rise up to fight against. And that's why they said that this kind of guilt, the kind of wrong things that is being done to the people, were washed in her blood. In other words, were lost to, in fact, were being compared to those lost warriors who had lost their lives. And that's how we can say that it is being washed in their blood. And that's how the poet draws out the historic recounts of what happened to Nagaland at one point of time in the 1950s, when people tried to unite together and fight for the cause of freedom. And this cause overcome by the Great Spirit, mankind's illness, and it is a war, like I said, that was an unprecedented war, and a war that was being fought in such great horrors. And silent heels, again, we can also say that it also referred to the oppressed people, who felt completely destroyed and who felt unable to voice their freedom. Commit great injustice in waging war. Here the lines also reflect that, in fact, the last line, and washed their guilt in her blood, also reflect the point or the fact that this war has committed great injustice to the people, because remember, the land is an innocent land. The land is a Kelhoukevira, which is an ideal land, a land where life is good. And this kind of war was being waged in that land, and that's how it has destroyed the people, the land altogether. However, like I said, this poem is not that of a gloomy poem here, even though it recounts that kind of a historical, horrific event. However, the poet also said that those people who still remember it about that Kelhoukevira, that in that way we are also acknowledging these people who had lost their lives in the cause for freedom, in the cause for independence. So here is a brief summary. The theme is all about, as you can see, it is all about Kelhoukevira. That is, again, this is a word in Angami, and it means where life is good. And what kind of a life is that? Simple, freedom-loving people who celebrate nature, who lived in peaceful coexistence, who understand individual independency, and has a rich cultural values and folklore songs that were part and parcel of their daily lives. And on that note, we would be winding up today's class. Thank you all very much for joining me.